You're listening to the Fresno Housing Spotlight, a behind-the-scenes look at how Fresno is working together to create housing opportunities and changing lives. I'm Tyrone Roderick Williams, CEO of Fresno Housing, and welcome to the show. Hello, I'm Tyrone Roderick Williams, CEO of Fresno Housing, and welcome to the Spotlight. This is our opportunity to share with you the great things that are going on at Fresno Housing. You know, we serve both the city and the county, 17 different municipalities. And joining me for this edition is the County Administrative Officer, Paul Nerland. Paul, welcome to the Spotlight.
Thanks, Tyrone. It's great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Well, I've been looking forward to having this conversation with you because the Housing Authority has an incredible impact throughout the county. And there are not many agencies that serve 17 different municipalities. And so this is our opportunity to just get together and talk about what is it like being the county, officer that oversees everything regarding the county. And Fresno is a huge county. It spans from one end of the valley to the other. And so I know that this is a new role for you in this position, but you've been leading the county and other departments for years. And so just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk about housing.
Absolutely. No, again, thank you for having me. It's been, the county is huge, over 6,000 square miles. And so coming into this role with the population, it was a big role coming into it. But a little bit about my background. I'm originally from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I know you're not a native of this area either, and so we both came from other areas, but I've been here since the 1980s and been with the county almost 25 years in different leadership roles. And so I know the organization pretty well, both inside and out, and have seen many different things, but had the opportunity to serve as the chief operating officer when I came in about a year and a half ago, and then I've been in this chair for about 8 months. So it hasn't been very long, and I was fortunate enough to meet you, both of us kind of coming in new to our roles. And one of the things I appreciated, Tyrone, about you right away was just the enthusiasm that you bring to your role. And we've had the chance to talk and partner in a number of things, but immediately I could see the enthusiasm that you have for this issue from the first meeting we ever had.
Well, I am just happy to be among incredible leaders like yourself. For those who may not know, what does the County Administrative Officer actually do?
My kids ask me that question all the time and trying to explain what that looks like. So the CAO is responsible for the budget of the whole county, which right now is about $4.1 billion looking at the last year. But we really oversee implementing everything our Board of Supervisors adopts, we implement it. And that includes policy for everything from law enforcement to behavioral health to social services to you name it. So it's a huge swath of functions. I'm actually sometimes learning new things the county does every day. We touch almost everything in Fresno County, and we do it in service. And so the CAO really guides and directs. Sometimes with a large organization, we have over 8,000 employees. One of my biggest roles is making sure this hand knows what this hand is doing and that we are all going the same direction together. And so I consider that one of my most important roles is making sure that we're being efficient, that the public can look at this government and say it represents their needs, but also we're all going the same direction.
Well, that's why I'm really excited about this opportunity to talk with you, because let's talk about the same direction. You and I are both leading in very challenging times. And we are in the midst of a housing crisis really across this country, but we are dealing with it on a daily basis here in the county. And so talk to me about how the county is developing its vision or strategy or approaching the multitude of issues related to the housing crisis.
Well, you're right, and one of the things I've seen is it approaches every single issue that we look at, everything we serve. And so our vision is working together for a quality of life for all. That's a nice saying, but what does it actually mean? In the county, everything we do is impacted by that housing crisis. So literally, whether we're talking about law enforcement, whether we're talking about social services and the number of cases that they're serving, whether we're talking about our behavioral health department and everything that they're doing to assist and serve, and whether we're talking about our public health and everything they're trying to do to serve so many in our region that don't have housing. For me, I'll just be honest, sometimes when you hear about the housing crisis in Fresno County, if it's not personal to you, if you don't know someone that's struggling, it's easy to dismiss it and think, well, I'm fine. I've got a home. I'm living in a place. Why is this really an issue? And I think one of the first things we need to do as leaders in Fresno County is make sure that people understand that this actually affects all of us. And so if we don't have a region where we can have affordable housing for everyone in this community, it really affects all of us. It affects economic development. It affects sustainability of everything in this community. I have 5 children at home, and so I think about their future. I have both adult children and some that are still finishing school. And those that are adults are of the age where I recall I bought my first home. And so they're at that age right now, and frankly, they can't do it. And they've gone through and they've graduated from college, but because of the market and the way it is, they cannot afford a home in Fresno County at this stage. That concerns me. And if that's the case with someone that is college graduate and here in this community, for those who cannot achieve that or not there, it's even more concerning. And so when we talk about really regionally collaborating and so working together, making sure that we're not, within the county of Fresno with all, not just the incorporated cities within Fresno County, but also we've got a lot of unincorporated areas, and we've got to make sure that whatever we do, we're working together and we're all going the same direction. And so that's a key to me in solving this issue.
Well, one of the things that I've gained an appreciation for are really our outlying communities where you have a large percentage of farm workers. And that really is the #1 employer, or agriculture is the #1 employer. And one of the things that we are endeavoring to do is to look at what we can do in partnering with the county and every funding source and funding agency that we can maximize those resources to address, those at the lower end of the spectrum, but who are essential elements of our economic structure for not only this county, but for the nation and all that they do in being able to bring produce to the market. And so we're looking at ways in which we can encourage development and find ways to really help those, what I call farming communities. What are some of the challenges that you all are seeing regarding those farm communities, and which are the majority of the communities in the county?
Well, first off, I'm glad you said that. In my office, Sonia De La Rosa is a deputy county administrative officer who works on this. And we chatted before this conversation. And she said to me, Paul, make sure we talk about that, because that is something that is so, so important. So first off, let's just talk about what that does in Fresno County as far as our ag-driven economy. We're the #1 ag county in the nation. That means about $8 billion this last year that is generated from just ag in this area. So just talk about what that does economically in this community and how important it is to have that workforce here and have them in a place where they're comfortable and housed. But that's the volume. I like to tell my friends in Georgia that more peaches are produced in Fresno County than the whole state of Georgia. But to do that, we've got a workforce in place. And so a number of things looking to the future. First, we're working closely with you and taking a look at options to rezone property in other areas, one of them being Delray. We're looking at to build multifamily and single-family units in the county's unincorporated areas is a goal. Now, we're not there yet, but we're certainly looking at that. There's a great need for housing, but I think the point you're raising is it's not just our partner cities that have this need. It's a lot of the unincorporated areas or some of our smaller cities where that need is there, and we need to be building these units. And I want to share this, what we're talking about here, it's very preliminary, but we're working with you to look at that. We need to have the funding and the cooperation of those around to do that. But that's a critical issue. I'm glad you asked that, because my team will be happy it came up. It's one of the things we talked about just before I came on here today.
Well, you know, on a personal note, farm laborers have a special place in my heart, because my first job was picking greens and corn in a rural community where my grandparents lived. So I'm always concerned about how are the laborers doing. And so one of the things that we are actively engaged in is looking at how we can enhance farm worker housing. We are engaged in all types of housing. We've got senior housing and multi-family housing, but we also have farm worker housing. And there's kind of two different ways of looking at two different types. One is that migrant farm worker housing, so housing where workers come while that crop is in season. And once that harvest is done, then they move to the next city or the next opportunity. And so we kind of rotate during the year. They leave and then they come back during the next harvest season. The other is permanent housing that is specifically targeted to those who work in the agricultural-based industry. And we had a chance to host, you know, our national USDA officials, and we're looking at ways in which to maximize those resources at the state and particularly federal level, really targeting that community, those communities and that population. But we are also doing so much more. We've got senior housing in many of the areas, and this is what I always say, Paul, because you know, different people have different opinions about affordable housing coming into their community. And the quality of our housing is such that if Fresno housing comes to your community, your property values go up. That we aren't a threat, we are an asset and not a liability. And that's our story. We're sticking to it, and we prove it time and time and time again. So as we have our County Board of Supervisors looking at the issues in their different areas and districts, not all communities are created equal from the standpoint that they are very unique. Talk to us about some of what you're experiencing in the unique areas of both our incorporated and unincorporated communities.
Well, I appreciate it, and I like the example that you used. Is it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, and I think that's some of what we need to communicate, even as we're trying to get the attention of the state or the federal government for help that we need, is ensuring that we know there's multiple options here and ways to do this. But maybe we should talk a little bit about what we're doing, and that might talk about things that would affect different areas. So
I'm all ears.
You're all ears? Okay. Well, I mean, so the county does a lot of things in partnership with you, and so glad to highlight some of those. So one of them is our Public Works and Planning and our Community Development Division. They work closely with you, and that's gone on for many years, and really they're focusing on integrating affordable housing in communities. And by the way, for those listening, having been to some of the ribbon cuttings and some of the beautiful facilities that have been opened up in partnership with the Fresno Housing Authority, it is exactly true. I mean, just some amazingly designed, beautiful facilities and housing that's been put together through these partnerships that have really improved those areas, and whether it's rebuilding or renovating an old facility or building something new, it's frankly beautiful compared to what it had been before. But that's one of the things we do. So we combine resources, and if I talk about just that community development, I was looking at the numbers, it's resulted in over 600 multifamily, but also senior community housing units that have been really throughout our incorporated cities here in Fresno County. We have more developments in the planning phases with you right now that I understand will generate about 98 more units. And so there's more in the works that we're going to be talking about. And as you said, they're both remodeled of old facilities and also building new facilities. And so that's just one of the ways that we partner with you. The most recent that I had the chance to attend with you was in Kingsburg.
Yes.
And it was a senior center, 47 units, the Linnea Villas, and what a beautiful outcome that was to see that. And you know, I know that you produced a video as well just highlighting that, but that was a great example of just seeing what could be done and just also making it match the community. I really appreciated the design that went into that facility. So that's just one of the ways that we do it. That's our Public Works and Planning. The other is supportive housing, and that's our behavioral health department. I know that Susan Holt will be a future guest, and we'll just
looking forward to that conversation as well.
She's a great person to come on, and we'll do a little plug for that here now. But just so people know what we do with that. So in addition to what we already talked about, behavioral health helps with more of the permanent supportive housing, but specifically to those who are low income, families who are at risk of homelessness, but also those with serious mental illness. And of course, the goal of this is to give them the services they need to keep them housed. And so that's the focus of our behavioral health department. I think we began in the early 2010s working actually with the Fresno Housing Authority on some of these kind of things. It resulted in 3 developments, a total of 121 units, a 20-year behavioral health services commitment at the site. And so,
and thank you very much.
It's a 20-year commitment,
sir.
Well, it's something that we appreciate. And then since 2021, new funding opportunities like No Place Like Home have provided more opportunities. That supported additional developments with supportive behavioral health commitments also for 20 years. And so that provides some stability that you know, there's a lot of one-time funding that's been available in other places, but providing the stability that this is going to be something that's going to be ongoing, I think is an important part of what we're doing. We also know we've got 2 more No Place Like Home sites that are a total of 53 units that are now operational today. Another 3 No Place Like Home sites are coming, which will, I think, bring another 143 units that are in the planning stages. And so DBH contracts with an outside entity, Exodus Recovery, that helps provide services at the sites. And so that's just another way that Fresno County partners with the Housing Authority.
Well, that's a litany of things, and we're just getting started, Paul. I can't tell you how important that the county's behavioral health department, not just when I say department, I'm really talking about people, because the commitment of your staff to working with our staff through difficult, none of these projects are easy, absolutely none of them. And they are multifaceted from the financing standpoint, but also how do we provide those ongoing long-term services for those residents to help them be successful. And without the county's commitment and dollars, that would not be possible. And so to you and everyone who's got anything to do with supporting, in many cases, what are some of our most vulnerable residents, this is so important. So I have to pause and give you and the whole team their kudos, because we can build housing, but housing alone is rarely just the solution when you're talking about a wide population with many different varied needs.
I think that's right, and I'll tell you with conviction that the team we have in place supporting this, they're passionate about not just providing the services, but ensuring that they're meaningful services. And so we want to make sure that we're not just doing this and checking a box. We want to make sure that it's actually having results and it's working. And so you'll enjoy having Susan Holt. She comes from a clinical background, and so she's got a passion for this, but really her whole team does. And so that is just another way that we're working together. And I have to tell the audience watching, when Tyrone and I first met, it's one of the first things we did was, well, let's take a look at all the ways that our organizations are working together. And I remember you said, you know, we were both looking at that list. It's amazing how much we collaborate. And as you said, we're just getting started. Frankly, we want to take that foundation and go to the next level.
Well, my goal is for us to continue. I know that we will. We cannot do what we do without partners like you and your team at the county. And we've got some challenges to face, but we're going to face them together. And we are committed and passionate about making a difference in the lives of all of our residents of the county, but particularly those who are most vulnerable. And it is a joy and a privilege to work with you. And I am so glad that you've joined us on this podcast to talk about how we're partnering with the county. Well, this concludes our time. I told you, time goes so fast.
That went fast, and we were just getting started.
Oh,
so.
well, you know what? Maybe we'll just schedule another time and invite you back to the table, and we can continue the conversation.
Thank you, Tyrone. Thanks for having me. Enjoyed being here.
Well, that concludes this episode of Fresno Housing Spotlight. To learn more about what we're doing at Fresno Housing, visit fresnohousing.org or follow us on social media. Thank you for joining us.